Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our webinar today from the Green, Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group of the European Microfinance Platform. As you know, we will be recording the session. It is the first time that we will have in meeting mode so that everybody can see who is participating. You can also connect. I invite you to comment, say hi to the others, tell us where do you come from or from which institution, if you are new to the action group, and and feel free to use the chat, and then in the discussion also your microphone if you would like, and video if you would like to be seen and heard. Of course, we have our Q&A, I think, or not, Camille, maybe, or we have our chat where you can post your questions and how it goes today. And as usual in our webinars, we have 30 minutes presentation and then 30 minutes discussion. People are still joining, so meanwhile, I will start sharing my screen then to get started, and also introduce to you our very special guest today. Okay. So we have everyone joining. Thank you very much for being here today. Here we are with Mathilde Bauwin, who is head of knowledge management at Enda, with almost 5 years of experience at the Luxembourgian NGO Enda, who has been supporting microfinance institutions already for over 25 years. Today, we are talking about from green microcredit to climate smart inclusive finance, lessons learned and new directions. I will start with an introduction of the action group with our activities, what are some updates for you to know. And then we will have the webinar from Mathilde, and then we'll open the floor for your questions and comments. So let's get started. The Green, Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group is a unique multi-stakeholder and think tank for environmentally responsible inclusive finance. And we follow different objectives. We discuss about current challenges and strategies in the sector, improve knowledge and actions, for instance, with this type of webinars, enhance cooperation among the stakeholders, increase international attention. We have our webinars with over 2,000 attendees from all over the world, develop dedicated tools such as the Green Index, which are recognized as a standard by the inclusive finance sector and supporting also green inclusive finance. We publish and disseminate our findings and enhance the interest and concrete commitment of all actors. Since 2013, which has been launched the action group, it has been hosted by the European Microfinance Platform, has over 150 members from over 70 institutions, where you see them here. And it's coordinated by us, Davide Forcella from Yapu Solutions, Sermia, and also the CBFI, and me, Natalia Realpe Carrillo, your host today from HEDERA Sustainable Solutions and the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies in Potsdam, where I'm fellow. You can visit our website in e-MFP.eu GICSF. It's not very easy to remember, but we will copy it in the chat. And you will, if you scroll down, you will see all the types of activities that we offer, also the resources, the Green Index, trainings and workshops, publications, online library, ongoing activities, webinars, definitions, tools, initiatives, events, and in the future, also some podcasts. Let's, I'll show you in a bit, very brief, what our resources are, and also about the tools. The first one is the Green Index, which is meant, and it aims to measure, plan, and improve the environment performance of financial service providers. It is a tool for evaluating the performance of the institutions at the institutional level, not at the client level. And it helps for awareness raising, for evaluation, commitment, for the planning, also for prioritizing activities and for monitoring progress. And it is a tool that has been developed originally or at the beginning in 2014. And its publication, it's available also on the website. Then it was available also in SPI4 as an optional dimension in the whole assessment. In 2016, some quantitative components were added. It was integrated into the SPI4 also, but only the qualitative indicators. And in 2021, and in the last year and a half, we have conducted several activities collecting feedbacks, including also the lessons learned with international initiatives that have been launched very recently. And of course, aligning it to the universal standards for environmental performance, the dimension 7, which has been developed jointly with the SPTF and CEDIS. And it's now a new mandatory dimension of the universal standards. This experience or the Green Index has already over 6 years of experience in assessments, and we have collected over 1,000 environmental assessments, and has been also applied in several projects. Here, a list of them, and has had many revisions, and we have done the mapping and alignment also with international initiatives. And finally, we have its third edition with these 4 standards: defining environmental strategy, identifying environmental risk and opportunities, managing environmental risks and opportunities, supplying green products and services, and with very detailed indicators. At the same time, we have the launching of the Dimension 7 from the Universal Standards for Social and Environmental Performance Management. And it has been developed in collaboration with the steering committee of the Green, Inclusive and Climate Smart Finance Action Group from the European Microfinance Platform, the SPTF and CEDIS. And the Dimension 7 is aligned and fully aligned with the Green Index 3.0. This tool is also available in a digital version, so you can have access to the survey from your web browser and also from your mobile phone. And it has been digitized by HEDERA and available for all the stakeholders. It is free of use, so anyone can fill it out, use it, adapt it then or install it in your institution. And from the action group, we can guide you and train you also, trainers as well as impact investors and financial service providers to implement it and assess their results. You can also have access to the Green Inclusive Finance online library, where we have more than 500 documents. If you have publications in regards to Green Inclusive Finance, please don't hesitate to share, so you can also find it here. We have our monthly webinar series with the videos and presentations available online. And we have more than 20 webinars on the subject that have started in 2021. And you can explore them also in our website. As well, if you would like to speak in our webinars, you can let us know so that we can book your spot for the next semester. Yesterday, we have launched our training modules that have been curated in the past months. And if you are interested in receiving a dedicated training in one of these modules, also contact us. And coming soon, we will have publication on the current status of Green Inclusive Finance with the detailed results of the more than 1,000 environmental assessments that have been collected in the past decade, thanks to the data contributions that have been done by these organizations. And the assessment, analysis, and publication has been prepared by us, and the data visualization has been provided by HEDERA. Finally, we have a publication on green inclusive finance in Europe that we are currently developing with the European Microfinance Network, which will be a study on green inclusive finance in Europe, also from the last, with the information from the last years. And with this introduction, now I'm very pleased to give the floor to Mathilde and start with the webinar today, from green microcredit to climate smart inclusive finance, lessons learned and new directions from Ada, a leader in the microfinance sector. Mathilde, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Natalia, and very nice to be with all of you today to share our experience, our lessons learned, and the new directions we are taking on this topic. So next slide, please. Yeah, so I will start by giving a few words about ADA for those who don't know much our organization, but very quickly. So ADA is a development NGO, and indeed we've been supporting the development of inclusive finance in developing countries for more than 25 years now. The main goal of our interventions is to improve the living conditions of vulnerable populations, and we do that by providing technical support mainly to financial intermediaries and microfinance institutions, but more and more to other organizations as well. So I will give a few more words on that when I will talk about the new directions we are taking. We also advise the Luxembourg Microfinance Development Fund with a specific team working with LMDF. And we also make sure to share our experience and knowledge created through our experiences. So actually being here today is one of these initiatives. I also give you a few figures about our activities in 2021, just to give you an idea of the scope of our actions. So last year, we managed to enable 160,000 people and vulnerable people to access financial services, 4,000 to access non-financial services developed with the support of ADA. We supported 370 MFIs, either with training or with technical assistance. We also supported more than 50 other types of organizations working with vulnerable populations or other types of intermediaries, mostly with technical assistance as well. 48 MFIs were a part of the LMDF portfolio at the end of 2021. We are now 45 people working for ADA with an annual budget of 14 million euros on average. And we may be a few more at the end of this year, actually. So next slide, please. So about our experience with green microcredits. So let's start with the beginning of the story, which was in 2011. So actually it means that it's more than 10 years that we are working on the development of green microcredit for vulnerable populations. And everything started in Peru, as you may see on these slides, in 2011, then when we worked with 2 MFIs for the development of microcredits to facilitate access to clean energy, so either equipments working with renewable energy or more energy efficient equipments. And then we quickly started in 2012 in Central America as well, working with the regional network of microfinance institutions, REDCAMIF, which enabled us to work with several MFIs on the development of green microcredits, different kinds of green microcredits actually. So still to facilitate access to clean energy, but also to enable people to adopt sustainable practices in agriculture or to improve their housing or water and sanitation system. So this started in 2012, but we still have projects on this topic today, actually. In 2013, we started to work on this topic in the Philippines, so also with the national network of microfinance institutions in this country, which enabled us to work with various MFIs, mostly on green microcredit to facilitate access to clean energy. And we still have a project ongoing with MCPI as well today on this topic. Finally, in 2019, we started to work with an MFI in Tunisia, and that time will on a specific credit for producers. I will show more in a few minutes. So it's combination of a credit for access to clean energy and for agriculture, sustainable agriculture. Yeah, next slide, please. So just to give you a more concrete idea of what it means to develop a green microcredit for all these things. So first, for renewable energy or energy efficiency, what it means concretely, for instance, in Peru, you can see that it enabled people to acquire improved cook stoves, for instance. So here it's more about energy efficiency, but also to acquire solar coffee dryers, solar water heaters. In the Philippines, it facilitated the access to solar lamps or mini solar home systems as well. So this is for energy. For sustainable agriculture, the credits developed especially in Central America, for instance, enable people to develop organic agriculture. This is an example of the type of sustainable practices financed with these green microcredits. In Tunisia, the credits enabled date producers to acquire solar water pumps, so to reduce the use of fuel energy, but also to reduce the quantity of water used thanks to better irrigation systems combined with the solar water pumps. And when we talk about eco-responsible housing, it means improving housing to make it more energy efficient as well, or to improve also water and sanitation systems and ensure better water management. Next slide, please. So now, what about the results of this experience? So here I will talk about the good side of the story, the nice side of the story. So you can see some numbers, some figures here, but of course they are constantly evolving because, as I said, we still have some ongoing projects on these topics. But let's say that so far on energy, we supported 17 MFIs on the development of such microcredits to facilitate access to clean energy, which benefited around 8,000 clients so far. And through various evaluations conducted with a few MFIs, we were able to identify the positive effects for the end clients. So it's not always completely quantitatively representative. So that's why we don't see some figures here, but at least it enabled us to identify qualitatively the type of positive effects which can result from such initiatives. So indeed, about energy, people were able to reduce their energy expenditure thanks to this type of equipment. They were also able to diversify their economic activities or their businesses or the services they offer to their own clients, for instance, by acquiring solar refrigerators. This enables people offering cold products to the community. It enables also people to work longer, so it enables them to improve their economic activity. And finally, the quality of life as well, thanks to cleaner energy compared to fuel, for instance. When it comes to sustainable agriculture, as I said just before, especially in the case of Tunisia, for instance, the evaluation showed that people indeed reduce the consumption of fuel, and thanks to the solar water pumps, it enabled them as well to use less water thanks to these irrigation systems, to better manage waste in general, to reduce the use of agrochemicals products, so to improve product quality as well, especially for organic agriculture, for instance, to diversify sometimes crop production, so the various types of positive effects of these green microcredits for sustainable agriculture. And finally, the credits for eco-housing or waste and sanitation systems. Of course, it enabled people to improve waste management, water treatment, and finally, their quality of life by accessing clean water. So this was the good side of the story, but of course, when we talk about lessons learned, usually we will learn more from challenges and difficulties. So I want to share with you the other side. So next slide, please. Indeed, from these 10 years of experiences, we were able to draw a lot of lessons learned, and I will give you some of them today, but you can have more information in the publication we released last year, 1.5 years ago, I think, which is available on our website. So we could share the link after the webinar or at the end of the webinar if it may be useful. But here I will give you a summary of these lessons learned. So first, working with MFIs to develop green microcredits made us realize that offering green microcredits is not only and should not only be about product diversification. Indeed, if MFIs want to develop these green microcredits just to reach a new niche of clients, a new segment of clients, and consider green microcredits just as any other type of credits, then there is a risk for failure. Indeed, developing green microcredits means making significant investments. And I will give you some examples here. And so the motivation behind the development of green microcredits should not be only product diversification. It's important that the MFI is really convinced that it will be beneficiary for the organization and for the end clients. So what could be these significant investments? So actually, first, it's important to be aware of the public policies or public programs in the region where the MFI intervenes. Indeed, for instance, and this comes from a real experience, if an MFI plans to develop or to offer credits for clean energy in a rural area where there is a plan, an electrification plan for the following years, so in the next year, next few years, then people may not be interested in acquiring solar equipments, actually, and so not be interested in these green microcredits. Same thing for agriculture. Actually, in some countries, there are public programs, public policies, which provide grants to farmers which adopt sustainable practices. And if an MFI develops a credit in the same area, the credit may not be competitive compared to what the public program offers. And so finally, it's the same. People may not be interested in this type of credit. So it's very important to be aware of public policies and public programs in the area. Then another lessons learned, many people think that energy products, solar equipments are useful only in rural areas where people are not connected to the national grid. And actually, our experience also showed that it may be very difficult for technology suppliers to make sure that people access these equipments in these remote rural areas. Some technology providers don't want to go so far, actually. And on the contrary, in urban or peri-urban areas, sometimes the quality of network is very bad. And so even if people are connected to the grid, actually they may be interested in solar equipments to compensate for this bad quality. And especially if there is no plan in the future to renew the network. So energy products, of course, can be useful and relevant in rural areas, but not only. Then I just talked about technology providers, and it's another lesson learned. It's also important to build strong partnerships for MFIs interested in developing green microcredits. So either with technology providers, but also with capacity building organizations to, for instance, to train farmers, producers to adopt these better practices. And so it's also investments to make for MFIs to make sure they work with the proper partners, and it may represent significant time and significant efforts to build these partnerships, especially because it's also important to be very clear about the sharing of responsibilities between the MFI and the technology providers. For promotion, for instance, who should do the promotion of the financial service, but also of the equipment. This must be very clear. Who should be the point of contact in case of a problem with the equipment? For after-sale service, this may cause some problems if it's not very clear from the very beginning. Then talking about product promotion, also very important to convince people to acquire such equipment or to take this type of credits. Actually, what is more efficient is peer exchanges. Clients will be more convinced to take a credit, to buy an equipment if they hear their neighbors, their peers, they hear that they are satisfied with the product and with the equipment. Demonstrations by the technology providers, for instance, can be useful, but usually peer exchanges are definitely more efficient. Then talking about convincing customers to take specific credits or specific equipment, it's also very important not to use only the environmental argument. People, especially vulnerable people, won't be convinced only if you use only this argument. Of course, the product you are offering, either the financial product or the technology, should enable people to fulfill a very short-term needs and a concrete need. And usually the economic argument is more efficient than the environmental argument only. Of course, it's an opportunity to raise awareness about environmental and climate change issues, but people won't be convinced only with that. This may work in our countries, but not where people have to face other more urgent challenges, actually. And finally, last but not least, who will convince the final clients to get the product? It's the field staff of the MFI. And so it means that field staff members must be themselves convinced about the benefits for the end clients, for the environment. And so it means for the MFI to invest also in terms of awareness raising, training for their staff. And actually, it's usually more difficult for field staff members, for loan officers to offer this type of credits to the end clients, because it means that they need to make more investments on their side, they need to learn, they need to understand, and it may be more interesting to provide incentives to compensate additional efforts of loan officers. Otherwise, and this is something we faced in our experiences, there may be some reluctance of loan officers to offer this type of credits. So it's also important to invest in this type of thing. So you can see from all these lessons learned that indeed developing green microcredits for MFIs represents significant investments, and so MFIs must be really convinced. So next slide, please. So on the basis of all these lessons learned, it makes ADA it's made ADA adopt a broader perspective, actually. So you may have seen through the figures I gave that actually the outreach of these green microcredits was not so high. And this is a thing, even after all these years, it's complicated to make sure green microcredits represent a big share in MFI's portfolio. It's difficult to make sure we scale these types of credits. And so on the basis of the lesson learned, we decided to adopt this broader perspective I will describe right now. So we changed a bit our approach. And so from now, the idea is to adopt a more holistic approach. So you may have seen that indeed we realize that it's very important to raise awareness, to build capacity, to work with technology providers, and all this cannot depend only on MFIs. It means for us that we need to work with a more diverse range of actors. And so of course, we will still work with MFIs, but not only. And sometimes the MFIs won't be our entry point, let's say, but we may start working with another actor and then make the connection with the MFIs. So very concretely, it means that in the future, we'll work with a more diverse range of actors indeed. And I will give a few examples just after. Then another change, for a long time, we focused on the needs of smallholder farmers and especially the financial needs of smallholder farmers. And so we we had a focus on agriculture only and the agricultural activity, but actually a few years ago, we can say that it's been 1 or 2 years that we want to take more into account these climate change issues. And so now climate change has become a kind of cross-cutting topic for our activities, our interventions. And when you work more on climate change issues, you realize that sometimes agriculture is seen as contributing as well to climate change. It's one of the causes of deforestation, for instance. And so focusing only on agriculture does not enable us to consider the complexity of climate change issues with a broader perspective. So the idea now is it fits in a landscape, and it may mean that we will also consider supporting agroforestry, forestry as an economic activity, preservation of biodiversity. So it means serving more different actors than farmers only, actually, and to work on these various topics more than on agriculture and even only sustainable agriculture. Finally, to be able to implement this more holistic approach and to work on these new topics, it will be also necessary for us to think about various financing mechanisms. So not only microcredit, actually, but the idea is also to make sure to attract or to work with climate finance. Why not carbon credits, to enable our initiatives on the topic to scale? Because working only on green microcredit, we can see that it doesn't enable us to scale. So next slide, please. So now I can give you a few examples of these new initiatives, this new perspective we are adopting. So first example, we have submitted a proposal to the International Climate Initiative with a consortium of actors. And the project would focus on several countries in Asia, but the idea is to channel climate finance until vulnerable populations. And to do that, the idea is to work with various actors in the climate finance value chain, let's say. So it means working with vulnerable populations to strengthen their capacities, raising their awareness. So working with capacity building organizations, also working with financial service providers to enable these people to get access to the adapted financial services, again, to acquire solar equipment, for instance, or to adopt sustainable practices. But the idea is not to stop there, but also to work with investors to make sure FSPs get access to climate finance and are able to develop and to scale these financial services for vulnerable populations. And finally, the idea also to work with regulators, especially in the case when the regulatory framework is not really enabling to channel climate finance until vulnerable people. So here you have an example of this more holistic approach we would like to adopt. Then other examples, different examples, because we'll work on new topics for us, such as forestry, such as agroforestry, maybe preservation of biodiversity. It means that we will need to work with new actors as well. So not only new actors, we have a project which has started with an MFI, actually to develop financial products for various actors in the forestry value chain. So this will be the first time for us. It's a new initiative, and the idea is to support producers, forest producers, but also people working in agroforestry, wood processors, many actors in the value chain. So this is maybe a more classical example, but we could work also with cooperatives of producers. We are now identifying cooperatives with which to work. The idea would be to connect them to financial institutions, to develop adapted financial services, but the entry point or the partner will not be only the MFI, could be also cooperatives, could be associations which provide entrepreneurial capacity building to forest entrepreneurs, for instance. So the entry point could be an incubator and will be an incubator. Actually, we have some examples like that. And then again, the idea is to make connections with financial institutions, but the entry point will be different. We are also working on climate insurance for producers this time, for smallholder farmers. And in this case, we work directly with insurtechs. So not only microfinance institutions, but we could work also with microfinance institutions to facilitate the distribution of such insurance products. But let's say that in this case, we partner with the insurtech. And finally, another example, in Senegal, we will start a project with a solar platform, as you can see on the picture here. And the idea is to enable entrepreneurs to connect to this solar platform and to use solar energy for their economic activity. And so in this case, we partner with a local organization, an NGO, which enable to install this platform. And the idea for us is also to connect the entrepreneurs using this platform with adapted financial institutions and with capacity building providers. So you see, you have a diversity of examples here of the new types of projects we will implement in the future, we are currently implementing. You see that it can be about agriculture, it can be about forestry, it can be about access to basic services as well, such as energy or water. And it can be with financial institutions, but also other types of actors. So last slide, please. So you see, it means for us working with new types of partners, working on new topics. So it means also significant investments on our side, actually, to learn how to work on all these new initiatives. So it will be definitely a challenge, but we are open to start and to test new things. So you know now that we are open for this new type of initiatives. It will mean also coordinate numerous diverse stakeholders, as I mentioned in the various examples. So this is also a challenge to make sure we coordinate well all these actors. And finally, showing the intention to work on more deeply on this topic also means using the proper environmental and climate standards to check that we are indeed reaching our objectives on this topic. It means also develop, adapt impact measurement methods, which will enable us to share the results of our new initiatives. So it's also a significant investment on our side, but this is what we are working on now. So I will stop here because I was a bit longer than expected, but I'm now open for the questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mathilde. It was very nice to see also the evolution of your support. I personally have accompanied or have been part of the technical assistance that you have provided to Fondesurco and Caja Huancayo back in 2010 to 2014. And it is impressive how it has evolved, the support that also reflects how we have changed from green microfinance to green inclusive and climate smart finance. Yeah, and exactly. Also the multiple actors and stakeholders that are involved, that now we call it financial or inclusive finance stakeholders. I would also add to the investment of the microfinance institutions, the market studies that they have to conduct and the evaluations that are needed. Also the partnerships, not only with the suppliers, but with international cooperation. And that it's also important for investors to have a look who is already having some, not from public policies, but also from charity or from international development cooperation with their initiatives that probably may have some intersection in the same regions where the microfinance institutions are working. And while you were talking, we have received some questions. I will say that we can, I can start reading the first one, and then we will open the floor also if people will like to raise their hands and turn on your microphones and videos to see you, and also engage in this discussion. Before closing the presentation, here is Mathilde's contact, her email, also the website from Ada for you to visit. We will also put it in the chat, and also our emails if you would like to contact us from the action group. Give one minute there before we close, and let's have you in the big picture. So let's start with the first question. From Arpita Pal Agrawal. Are there instances where you have had microfinance institution partners alter their credit appraisal process to either have carrot for green projects or stick for climate unfriendly projects? This could be in terms of softer interest rates or longer repayment period or any others. What have been your experiences?
Yeah, so the question is if MFIs adapted their price policies, right? To to attract clients. Yes, indeed. So it was not the case in all our experiences, definitely, but indeed there are such experiences where MFIs provide better interest rates, for instance, to convince, especially for credits for sustainable agriculture. To attract clients for this type of product. Longer term loans, I don't have that in mind, but I guess, or at least from our experiences, but I guess it's totally possible. But indeed, it's also necessary to develop this kind of carrots, as it was mentioned, to attract clients and to convince them to make the necessary investments as well on their side sometimes, because it's not always only supporting sustainable practices, but sometimes it's convincing to adopt sustainable practices, and in this case it represents much more significant investment for producers. So in this case, it's not only about the financial services, but also about the capacity building, of course.
Yeah, and in this, in the portfolio diversification, there is a process of development of new product, which will be adapted to the characteristics found in the market research and also according to the technology that will be financed.
Yeah. Just this is Arpita here again. Natalie, can I just ask a question to Mathilde?
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so Mathilde, and like you've said, you've seen carrots in terms of better interest terms, but have you seen lowering of credit scores also in case it was an unfriendly, climate unfriendly project, like somebody asking for, I'm just trying to think of an example which is overtly climate friendly, but somebody's putting a plant there versus, is there some negative marks also on the credit? Is that also something you've seen, or it's not there?
I'm sorry, but I cannot understand very well. I don't know, Natalia, if you were able to.
It's
the connection is not very good.
I understood the question. The question. Thank you. The question is if there are not just positive, incentive, but also negative incentives. So you get a higher interest rate, or we don't finance you. That's an example. If you do not comply with certain criteria, at the first loan, at the second loan, etc.
Honestly, I haven't seen that. I don't know if it exists. I guess it could exist as well, but I've not seen that, and I'm not sure it would be very efficient. From our experience, it's already complicated to convince clients to take these types of green microcredits. So I'm not sure it would work actually, but I don't know. Maybe there are some experiences like that. I don't know about them.
Okay, thank you, Arpita, for the follow-up. I see one raised hand from Halumba, but before giving you the floor, I'll read the questions that came before from Leah Gonzalez. Thank you, Mathilde, for your presentation. How do you assess the green dimension of institutions that are not microfinance institutions? Whether do you also use the SPI4?
Very good question, and I have to say that we are working on that actually. So we are not doing it yet, but we will in the future. And so we need to develop something specific for our projects. We will rely on existing resources, of course, and actually the Green Index especially could be a source of inspiration even for other types of organizations, but it won't be enough for sure, and we will need to use other types of standards. So this is what I mentioned at the end. Actually, we are doing kind of mapping of the existing standards, and we will choose the ones on which we will rely in the future and adapt them to our reality, of course, because the idea is not to create a too heavy process either, but of course to have some let's say at least a do no harm approach, so to make sure we work at least with responsible actors, and when it's about a project focusing more specifically on climate change issues or environmental issues, we'll need to use specific indicators, specific criteria, and the idea is to develop that this year, before the end of this year. So we are working on it.
Okay.
Maybe Natalia, just to make some publicity also to another member of the action group that has been doing similar things for the value chain. I don't know if there is anyone here from the city. They're working half and half with microfinance institution and the value chain actors, and they have an approach in terms of indicators that exactly has been extrapolated somehow from other setup and indicator specific for no microfinance. That's specifically for agriculture, to understand the chemical use, connection with possible market players for specific product, et cetera, to assess the environmental performance.
Yeah, and actually there is, we are also working with actors working on the development of a tool to assess the responsible practices of actors in the agricultural value chain. So responsible practices could include different aspects, not only the environmental aspect, but also the environmental aspect. And Cerise is working on the development of this tool right now, which is supposed to be aligned with the principle for responsible investment in agriculture and food systems, the RIE principles. I don't know if you are familiar with that, but the idea is to have a similar scoring tool for actors in the agricultural value chain, similar to SPI4, and we will test the use of this tool in another program we have on agriculture, with some investors, which are agri SMEs, cooperatives. So we'll be able to test the use of this tool actually, and which should be available for the sector after several tests, and so maybe not this year, but in a few months, let's say.
Okay, thanks, Mathilde. To Halumba, I think you, do you still have the question, or was it answered with the comment Mathilde gave?
Yes, I still have a question.
Okay.
I have two comments and I think one question, if not two questions. Thank you very much, Mathilde, for that presentation. It was really very helpful. My name is Munachonga and I'm from Zambia. I just wanted to learn, you mentioned in your presentation that also people in urban areas are also buying into the product. So the question I have is, do we have data that shows the comparison of those in the rural areas compared to those who are in the urban areas, so that the data can speak to that? And then the other question I have, which is the last one, is do you extend your services, say, for example, to Southern Africa organizations? Because I did hear you that you partnered one in Morocco, is it the other side of Africa, and specifically also in Asia. What of Southern Africa? So these are the 2 comments I have. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the question. So it's a very interesting question. Actually, what I mentioned came from a concrete experience in the Philippines, especially, where we realized that people were interested in solar equipment in urban areas and not only in rural areas. But it was in the case of a specific experience in terms of data in general about the acquisition of solar equipment in rural areas versus urban areas. No, I don't know where we could find such data, but if I remember well, the tools developed by HEDERA enable to analyze the demands for and the needs for energy equipment in general. So so I don't know if some publications are available which could give some information on this aspect. Maybe I'll let you say something, Natalia, and then I answer the second question.
Yeah, we will have also some results analysis from the data collections that we have been performing at the Impact Data Project with several organizations, including some experiences in Zambia. And from the experiences that we have had with microfinance institutions, or that I have personally supporting microfinance institutions in their diversification, definitely it's not only for rural areas, but in urban areas where they are needing backup systems, there is an interesting demand. And it's rather the question if the technology and the pricing of the technology fits to the conditions of a credit, or if for the peri-urban and urban households, these equipments are easier to get with saving some months and then buying it by cash. That's the other challenge.
Okay, and so just to answer the second question, actually, indeed, we have now priority countries to develop new initiatives, which are in Africa, Senegal, and Burkina Faso, in Asia, Cambodia, and Laos, and in Central America, Guatemala. But it doesn't mean that we intervene only in these countries, and we could have projects in other countries, including in East Africa, actually, or Southern Africa. The idea being to, in this case, to learn from this experience and to be able to replicate or at least use the lessons learned in an initiative in a priority country. So this is the condition, let's say, to work in these countries, but it's possible if it enables us to learn and to replicate in our priority countries.
Okay, so let's continue with the next question from Keredin Kaya. Thank you, Mathilde, for your presentation. Are there microfinance institutions that have started to analyze the environmental impact of their financing in addition to the social and economic impact?
So if we know some MFIs which have done it, and this is a question.
Perhaps also if you have started this type of evaluations.
Yeah, no, so it's a very good question. Actually, as you may have seen in the results I presented in the evaluations we made, we focused more on the socioeconomic effects for the people. Again, it was done through qualitative interviews, and we didn't quantify these effects, but at least we identified the positive effects and the percentage of people sharing these types of positive effects. With solar equipment, we also did some estimations of the CO2 emissions avoided. Actually, but it was broad estimation, and but the idea, our intention is to improve the methods and to choose a method to do it more properly, and to do it with the partners, of course. So if a partner is an MFI, to also share this method with the MFI. So we still need to identify the proper methods. We know that, for instance, the network Gogla, so the network of pay-go companies, shared some methodologies, standard methodologies to do this type of estimation. But we still need to define our own methods, which has to be done this year as well, actually. And then we will do it with our partners. And if it's an MFI, it will be done with an MFI. In the Philippines and in Central America, we have actually currently some projects on this topic, and we need to measure the positive effects more properly than what we did in the past. So we may test these new methodologies with MFIs in Central America and or in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm. And then also to consider to start from the beginning with baseline studies so that
but it means making again significant investments in this case. So that's why we want to define a methodology which won't be too heavy, but still which would mean something. So and we are very open to work with people on these topics, of course. I'm sure that
wow, I lost connection.
I'm sure there are already, and so we'll be glad we can hear you.
Okay, good. Just was frozen for a moment. Yeah, it's a very passionate topic, especially when we're talking about impact assessment. So glad that we are discussing this now. Next comment that I would like to read out loud, also from follower, very loyal follower of our activities at the Action Group, Olusola Olaniyi. Mathilde, thank you for an insightful and full presentation and for being involved in smart finance, climate smart microfinance, including forced smart financing services for sustainable development. Kudos. Now we have a question from Bo Diarra. Thank you very much, Mathilde. As you are open for new initiatives from the private sector, do you have regional offices, or where or how can we reach you directly?
And so no, ADA doesn't have regional offices. We are almost all based in Luxembourg, but we still have a few expatriates in the field. Actually, maybe we could share after or at the end of the webinar the contacts of the people responsible for the new initiatives. Of course, you can contact me if necessary, and I can redirect you to the proper persons. But we have some persons responsible for the new initiatives on these topics. It's not necessarily linked to the region, it's more about the topic actually, for these new types of initiatives. So depending if it's on agriculture, forestry, basic services such as energy, water, could be about entrepreneurship. We have different people who can be reached. But then, I don't know if it's easier to contact me in this case, and then I can redirect to the proper persons.
Mm-hmm. So let's make sure that your email is also on the chat. Then we are reaching already the hour, but we have some questions more. If you don't mind, we would like to answer them. So we will have like 10 minutes more. I see there's a lot of
minutes more. It's maybe a bit difficult, but a few minutes
difficult
more,
to reach so many questions. If not, it will be, we can copy the questions and then answer with a publication or something that we can organize with the
But of course, we can have still a few minutes.
Okay, let's go. From Barne Okuku from Uganda. Thanks for the presentation. Apart from the technical assistance, do you also have financial support in terms of improved tree species and other materials? When are you coming to East Africa, especially Uganda, where we are urgently in need of policies to combat the effects of climate change? Thank you.
Interesting, very precise question. So indeed, actually, we always provide technical support with financial support. It comes together. Then we have internally specific objectives on each topic. So on the topic of agriculture and forestry, the idea for us is to strengthen the value chains, for instance, so either agricultural value chains, either forestry value chains, so to facilitate the links between the various actors active in the value chain. So we have kind of priorities per topic. And the main objective is still to facilitate access to inclusive finance for these actors, even if it means working with different or other organizations to also provide capacity building, to also provide access to market, for instance, but there should always be a link with access to inclusive finance as it's the core of our mission, let's say. So, so that's why the projects can have different forms, and but yeah, to answer easily, there is always financial support with technical support, and it's important to think about access to inclusive finance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now we have a question from Asma Ben Salem that I think it's very important for all the organizations that are accompanying or joining us to this webinar. Thank you, Mathilde, for your presentation. Could you please share the steps of the process of green finance for the case of Enda in Tunisia?
So what do we mean by process?
What were the steps and phases that you took in the whole program of green finance with Enda?
So of course, there was various steps, and the project manager responsible for this project would be more able than me to answer this question, but at least from what I know, there has been first a kind of analysis of the current portfolio of the MFI to see where could be the opportunities actually to develop green products. I also know that it was not the first green product developed by Enda. They had other experiences in the past on waste management, for instance, but yeah, it was something completely different. But in this case, they started by analyzing the portfolio, identified the opportunities with the current clients, and then there was a strong partnership with the technology provider as well, and with an expert in technology, in solar technology, to identify what would be the best product and the most appropriated product in terms of equipment for the producers in a specific region of Tunisia where this needs of solar water pumps has been identified. So the first step was not to look for new clients actually, but to identify the opportunities in the existing portfolio, and then to select a region where to test this initiative, because it was a pilot initiative. So to run a market study, to develop partnerships with the technology provider, and to work with ADA and an expert in solar technology to design both the financial product and the equipment, the proper equipment to be provided to farmers. And then they distributed the pilot products in the COVID period. So it was not an easy experience for Enda. But at the end, even if they didn't reach the quantitative objectives, they were still happy with the positive results for clients, and they learned lessons from the experience thanks to a deep evaluation they did themselves. And this is very important. The MFI coordinated the evaluation internally, and which enabled them to learn directly and to appropriate the lessons learned. And now they will revise some characteristics of their offer. So they followed these steps, you know, first analysis on existing data, market study, partnerships, pilot of a product and a financial service, evaluation to improve the service, and they will continue.
Exactly. Yeah, which was also the process that you have had, or that we have had in Peru a decade ago, and that we see that with every microfinance institution is the same. and depending on the motivation or also the context of constellation of stakeholders, it can be faster or a longer. No, it will takes also some time, these phases. The next question is from Moise. Wait, what should we do step by step to move on with this program? You mean like, Moise, if you are still with us?
Yes.
Is like to conduct for yourself a green microfinance or a specific program that Mathilde listed?
Hello?
Yes, we hear you.
Thank you for giving this opportunity to speak with you. I am Moses from Burundi. I'm connected to this link, but we are not maybe membership of the country which is sponsored by the project. But after presentation, we are very interested by the program. We are in Burundi. We don't know that Burundi can be an interesting country for the program. If is okay, we are ready because we are a national non-profit organization. We are more involved in rural development action, specifically child education, climate change. So we want to know if we can move on with this program because we are ready and flexible for any kind of a partnership. Thank you for giving this opportunity to speak with you. I have written some question here on the chatting. I think that Mathilde can sometimes reply to us. Sorry for my English.
It's great.
It's perfect. Yeah. And yeah, so actually it's a bit the same answer as before. I think the easier it is to contact us directly. In this phase of testing new things, we want to support initiatives which are already defined and designed by the organizations themselves. So we are open to know more about what you are doing in this field, and I can redirect you to the proper person depending on the specific topic. Yeah, I think it's the easiest
yes,
way.
Can it be very interesting if you connect it to us for the proper person who are in charge of the program, and then we can go on and sharing experience, because we have more than 10 years on the field. We are on the community. We intervene in different sectors of the development community. And then for make you so clearly, we are more involved on girls' education. We are more involved on the girls' education. We have a regional higher school girls' education, who we train the girls on food processing.
The best is to send this information by email, I think, because we are reaching the end of this webinar. But of course, you have my email address in the chat right now that Natalia shared. So yeah, don't hesitate to write to us.
We can brief you on our background, and then let us share the opportunity and see what we can do together. Thank you.
Thank you, Moise.
Okay.
So we will go to the last question, and it will be exactly the 10 minutes. It is from here, Olusola Olaniji. Do you have a fixed method or model or one size fits all that you use in all your locations, or you need to adjust or localize the method model in any new location?
The method model of
I will say to start green microfinance, or in the different initiatives that you have.
So if it's about green microfinance per se, I would say that the process is usually the same as we just discussed. Of course, if it's for new initiatives, as I presented at the end, with new actors, each model is specific and each process is very specific. We are starting new things, testing new things. So in this case, there is no standard process we are following. It depends a lot on the type of actor and the objective of the project. But let's say that the idea is to start with small projects, short projects, to test things quickly and to test new types of partners quickly, to learn, and then to design bigger programs on one of these specific topics.
Yeah, and I saw that you applied to IKI, so I will say, because I see that we have here, we have Action research institutions that have joined today. If you see a call for proposals of large programs that fit to the subjects that you are working on, you can share this with Ada, and also like see if there could be some potential collaborations or interest to apply together. So thank you very much, Mathilde, for sharing with us about your work and also about these new initiatives. Thank you, all of you participants that have joined today, that have participated actively. We have participants from many different countries in Africa and also from Nepal, from Ethiopia, also from Latin America. So very glad that you have joined today. And we have shared with you many links in the chat. Thanks, Davide, to keep up all the advertising to our activities. And we look forward to see you again in our next webinar next month in June. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a nice afternoon, and we can stop now the recording and finalize the webinar.
Okay.
Thanks to all.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
See you soon, everyone.